So now let's work in a couple different ways. I have a graph that's built here. I want to build the equation that models this. Let's see if we can do it. What do I notice in this graph? I notice I have a midline at 13. D equals 13. I notice what? That when I go from the midline, I hit 55. Distance from 13 to 55 happens to be 42. 13 down to negative 29 in absolute terms also happens to be 42. I know that my amplitude is equal to 42. What kind of pattern do I see here? I'm starting at a max, I'm finishing at a max. That's a positive cosine pattern. What else do I need to work my way through? Where do I start to draw? I'm starting to draw at pi over 12. I must have a t minus pi over 12. That's helping me with my value as c, so to speak. Now, what's the next thing? I've drawn one period here. How long is the period? Well, it's 9 pi over 12 minus pi over 12. That's equal to 8 pi over 12, I think, right? Which in turn would be what? 2 pi over 3, 2/3 pi. So that's my new period. Well, if the period, remember, period is equal to 2 pi over b. What did I get for a period? I got 2 pi over 3. What's that telling me? B must be equal to 3. So, do I have everything I need to go ahead and build this? I sure do. Y equals positive. I'll put a positive. It's kind of redundant, but so what? 42. The reason I say so what, not the reason is just because I'm filling in which pattern I want. It is kind of unnecessary. Really only would need if I go with a negative sign there. But nonetheless, helpful just for what we're trying to do. 42. What do I have? Well, I know it's the cosine function. And what's my angle? 3 times t minus pi over 12 plus d plus 13. And there's the whole equation. 42 cosine of 3 times t minus pi over 12 plus 13. So understanding the patterns, understanding the values gives you all you need to build a pretty complex equation. All right, let's do one more problem. It's a word problem. A rotating circular wheel has a diameter of 47 inches. The bottom of the wheel sits 3 inches off the ground. You notice there's a bright red spot on the tire's outer edge and decide you want to build an equation to measure the height of the red spot at any point in time. How high is that red spot above the ground? You note as you start looking at it that 3 seconds after you start timing, the red spot hits its lowest point. You next note that the red spot hit its high point 11 seconds after you started timing. Write an equation that models the height of the spot. So, let's do a couple things. I notice that at 3 seconds, I'm at my low point, which happens to equal 3 inches off the ground. My high point, this is a diameter of 47 inches. My high point, 11 seconds at high point equals, not 11, 47 plus 3, so 50 is how tall it must be. Remember, 3 inches off the ground, so the high point is also 3 inches off the ground, so it's equal to 50. Let me just clean that up a little bit. All right, so we have a couple things that we can already start to model. Let's go ahead and do such. We know at the low point, which happens to be 3 seconds into this, I'm at what? 3 inches above the ground. At 11 seconds, I hit my high point, which happens to be what? 50, okay? So that's my high point, and I know that is what? At t equals 11 seconds. Well, think about it. If it takes me that long to go from min to max, it's going to take the same amount of time, which is 8 seconds, to go back from max to min. And so, by the way, I know at 19 seconds, I get back to my minimum. I also should know what? Well, At 7 seconds, I ought to be what? Halfway going there. Hey, that sounds like a midline. And also 11:15 is right the midway point. And then so max min, all I have to think is my midline has to be right in between that, which would be at 26.5. And so now I have a nice little wave function to work with. I've drawn a graph. And now we're kind of back to where we were in the other cases. What kind of pattern is this? Starts at its min. That's a negative cosine pattern. What's my midline? 26.5. D equals 26.5. What's my amplitude? Well, gee whiz, if you think about it, it ought to be half the diameter of the wheel. But again, 50 minus 26.5, 26.5 minus 3. In both cases, you're going to get an amplitude of 23. Where did I start drawing? At time equals 3. I'm going to have a t minus 3 to work with. My last piece, let's find the value of b. My period equals 16. Okay, remember, period equals 2 pi over b. 16 equals 2 pi over b. What's that tell us? B equals 2 pi over 16. B equals pi over 8. 2 pi divided by pi over 8. Pi's go away. 2 times 8, because the 8 comes up top, 16. I have everything I need. Y equals negative, how much? 23. Cosine of what? Pi over 8 times what? T minus 3 plus 26.5. So there's our process. Take what you have in your problem, identify a max, min, midline, understand your timings as to when you have these observations, and building one of these should be pretty straightforward.